Cosmetics are one of the most common features found in video games, but despite their popularity, companies still struggle to get them right. And honestly, it would be very easy to sit here and talk about how terrible the state of skins is in 2026, but I think it's better to use my energy on something worth praising. And naturally, the first game that comes to mind is The Finals. If you're not familiar with this game, The Finals is a fast-paced FPS set in a virtual game show where teams fight to steal and secure cash while destroying the entire map around them. The goal is to climb the bracket, reach the finals and win the tournament. While the game is far from perfect, one thing it does remarkably well is cosmetics. But how does a good cosmetic even look like? Well, one of the first things people notice in a new skin is its quality. Quality which is supposed to be better and more polished than the default skin for people to even consider it a success. Sadly, most gaming companies don't even think about quality anymore, they only prioritize profits. This is clearly a common issue in today's age, especially when it's easier to rely on underpaid employees who use AI instead of hiring someone that's actually talented. Now, I know The Finals also uses AI-assisted tools for some cosmetics, like repeating patterns, but even those are then edited by in-house artists and end up looking great. To have a better understanding of what kind of quality I'm talking about, I'll show you probably one of the ugliest skin bundles there is in The Finals, the Gold Dust Collection, and if you're not a White House resident, you probably agree with me, it looks horrible. However, if you take a closer look, you'll notice some scratches and finger smudges on the shiny metal. These imperfections are not randomly there, but carefully placed to tell a story. The story of how difficult it is to obtain fame, with the only way up being hard work and exhaustion, and this attention to detail is what drives up the quality. Another important aspect is the way the skin makes you feel, because after all, cosmetics are nothing else than just a bunch of colored pixels on a screen. They don't normally offer any gaming benefits during matches, they're simply made to look good. But this good looking aspect is more important than you think. Your brain loves well-made things, and owning something that's beautiful not only makes you feel better, but it also boosts your confidence. And being confident is one of the most powerful attitudes you can have during any competitive scenario. It eliminates hesitation, reduces panic, and allows you to operate at your full potential, directly affecting the outcome of any game. And if a cosmetic doesn't make you experience even a tiny bit of that, then it is a failure. The next thing I consider important is the journey, and unlike the previous two factors, this has nothing to do with aesthetics. The only thing that matters is the satisfaction you get while trying to unlock said skin. Be it a battle pass, an event, or a skill-based reward, they should all feel like a fun experience rather than a chore. And when it's done right, the value of the skin also goes up. Now, what a lot of lazy companies do is to simply release new skins behind huge paywalls with no story or adventure attached to them. And what this does is it diminishes any crumb of satisfaction and dopamine you could have had grinding for it. Owning a hard-to-get cosmetic doesn't only give you a certain level of satisfaction, but it also gives you respect and credibility in the lobby. And if you're a competitive player, you know that there's nothing else that screams "I'm good at the game" louder than a skin that proves that. And lastly and most importantly, for a skin to be good, you have to simply like it. Everyone is different and you might prefer something that I don't, but that's okay. The only thing that matters is if it brings you joy. Now that we have a basic idea of what a good skin looks like, we can move on to the next chapter and see what The Finals is doing different. First, I want to mention that in its community, there's a general agreement that The Finals has one of the most beautifully executed cosmetics in the entire gaming industry, and to understand why that's the case, it's important to learn a tiny bit about the studio behind the game, which is Embark Studio, a studio full of passionate and talented people with a main focus on creativity. It all started in 2018 when 6 people came together and founded a studio, with most of them coming from DICE, the company that made Battlefield. Now, I know you've probably heard this a million times already, but it's important to mention because the experience they brought with them to Embark Studio matters a lot in this context. They know how toxic of an environment corporate restrictions can create, so when it comes to cosmetics, they've adopted a non-restrictive philosophy. This philosophy allows artists and developers to freely express their ideas without being afraid of taking risks. It's otherwise called creative freedom, and it fuels nothing else than pure passion. Without passion, the cosmetics wouldn't feel and look the same way, and that's one of the main reasons the community likes them so much. Another reason would be the designs themselves, focusing more on fun elements rather than rigid and realistic ones. And that's because the game thematic is set in a virtual game show where anything can exist, be it flip-flops as throwing knives or a literal watermelon on a stick as a hammer. They all work thanks to the genius game setting they've created. And if you've listened to the past 2 minutes, you know that this is not random, but an intentional design that allows them to express creativity and be different from other games. Now, of course, this is not an entirely unique idea, as other games like Fortnite and League of Legends also do it very well. But something I've never seen before in any other game is how deep the customization system is. You can literally change and customize everything you want with almost no restriction. For example, I've got this Japanese chef outfit from the Battle Pass a while ago, and the only thing I like about it are the pants. Normally I wouldn't be able to do anything about that, but in the finals I can. So what I ended up doing was to use the pants in another design to make my own skin inspired by the Italian mafia / yakuza. And the most interesting part about this is that I've used elements from a total of 5 skins. So as you can see, the possibilities are endless. I wish more games had a system like this because it makes cosmetics 10 times better. Another thing the finals does differently is how it sells skins. It tries to avoid toxic tactics like FOMO, and instead it focuses on a more consumer-friendly strategy. One of those strategies includes skins always being available for purchase and not locked behind a limited period of time. This gives you the option to not make impulsive decisions, removing anxiety and the feeling of being left out. It doesn't only benefit the player's wallet and mental health, but also the company's reputation. The second strategy is the shopping experience itself. The skins come up in bundles, so if you only like a specific part of a skin, you can safely purchase it without wasting a ton of money on the whole set. Additionally, you can inspect each item, zoom in and out, and even preview the animations to make sure it's something you actually like before buying it. With that being said, I've also learned that not everything is perfect and there are actually some skins that can't be obtained anymore. Those usually come from limited time events, Twitch drops, contracts, and ultimate battle passes. While this is indeed FOMO, it's just a small percentage of the overall pool of cosmetics, and it's honestly not bothering me that much. Now, when it comes to the free-to-play experience, this is where things get even more interesting. Because usually when a game is free, there's always a catch. Either you're heavily restricted or the best cosmetics are locked behind a paywall so aggressive that it almost feels like you're being punished for not spending money. But in the finals, that doesn't really happen. Instead, the game gives you a steady flow of rewards just for playing. Whether it's through the battle pass, events, or contracts, you're constantly unlocking something. And while not every item is mind-blowing, the important part is that it never feels like you're completely left out. You're still part of the system and still progressing. And this matters more than people think, because when a free-to-player can actually participate in the cosmetic ecosystem, it creates a sense of inclusion rather than separation. You don't log in feeling like a second-class player surrounded by people who paid for everything. Instead, you feel like you belong in that lobby. And sure, if you decide to spend money, you'll probably get access to more premium designs, but the gap between paid and free isn't so massive that it kills your motivation to play. If anything, it does the opposite. It makes you want to keep going, because you know that eventually you'll unlock something cool without being forced to open your wallet. And I think that's the biggest difference. The finals doesn't treat free players as a problem to be solved, but as a core part of the experience. It respects your time, rewards your effort, and most importantly, it doesn't constantly remind you that you didn't pay. And in a market where most free-to-play games are designed around pushing you towards spending as quickly as possible, that approach feels surprisingly rare. Overall, the finals understands that cosmetics are more than just something you buy, they're something you experience. From the quality and attention to detail, to the freedom of customization, the fair monetization, and even the way free-to-play players are treated, everything feels intentional. It's not perfect, and it doesn't try to be, but in a time where most games prioritize profit over passion, the finals manages to strike a balance that actually respects the player. And maybe that's why cosmetics stand out so much. Not because they're flashy, but because they feel like they were made with a purpose. And that's the end of the episode. I hope you liked it, and until next time, stay safe.